Thanks for choosing us. This afternoon, we start with workers of the Rail Workers Union because they have staged a picket at the Ministry of Transport accusing government of failing to honor its obligation to pay their salaries. The workers say they have gone without pay for about 14 months, a situation they describe as severely impacting their livelihoods and the welfare of their families. Well, my colleague Stephen Mensah was on the ground. He joins me in the studio with more on this. Stephen, you've been engaging some of the workers. What are their concerns?
So for these workers, they say that the salaries or the arrears government owes them is impacting their livelihoods, given that some of them say they are unable to pay the school fees of their children. Some also say that it has led to the death of some of their colleagues also. They indicate that government has failed to honor its obligation, given that always when they come to them for negotiations on their terms of conditions or their salaries, government fails to come forward with an amicable resolution to what they want, given that every time for the past 14 months they've gone to government asking for their salaries, but then all these conditions, the negotiations they've had with government has proven futile. We can listen to some of the members I engaged earlier today when they picketed at the Ministry of Transport.
God, only God. But say there's problem in the house.
They keep on lying to us. That's the reason why we crowded here.
When you say lying to you, what do you mean?
It means that I'm the Adenishada Equa. No more postponed. The thing is on pending. The thing is on pending. The thing is on pending. Now we are tired of it.
I would want to know how much you are getting as pay or salary
as a month.
As an amount.
A month, 1,500, only 1,500 me. But also be the position.
So for the past 15 months, 14 to 15 months, you've been without pay for 1,500 every month. So how do you survive?
Masa, since you are young, you work at the end. I don't
know. This I'm going to don't take another Samenda or Sameda, I cause some no control about control me. Easy, 15 months. You're in Choka, a better than Eddie. A better than Eddie Massa. I don't know. Remember, today, what's good with Moonshine, or Madam Manawako School. As I was about to bed and watch because one catch and say, oh, take a party. No, the butcher and can take a Padaco, scatter away. But
on the government, Akasa.
Government, oh,
you leaders,
your leaders who are Como and Rapapo, Omo Casa, Omo Labor, some by. Keep it on some by. Yacomo Saka, one man when I says, come on from man. It's just to say that years ago.
And I could see how frustrated they were. But you've been engaging the General Secretary on the exact amount that they are owed together as a group. Tell us more on that.
Well, for a bit of explanation as to what the members said. For some of them, they indicate that their wives, they live off their wives. So their wives bring home the income or the monies they will need for their daily upkeep. One of the individuals we spoke to indicates that he's unable to pay his children's school fees. And that's one of the visible frustrations you witnessed in the video. For the General Secretary we spoke to, he indicates that there was a meeting between themselves and National Labour Commission. And every time they've gone to National Labour Commission for an update as to their picket or a protest with respect to their strike, they always give them the feedback to go and come back later, given that the government is trying to resolve the issue. But then all this while, these negotiations have proven not to work as expected of them. So we can listen to Benjamin Isumen, who says that they'll be returning to the Ministry of Transport on Tuesday, given that they're giving governments 3-day ultimatum to make sure that their issues are resolved.
Demonstration, peaceful picketing, that's why we are here, to tell us when. As the chief director is saying now, that we should give him by Tuesday or Wednesday, we will be here. So we see the check.
Executives of the Ministry of Transport will be engaging the leadership of the Rural Workers Union on what these individuals, the members of this Rural Workers Union, are here picketing today about.
As with government things, you don't just go and take the money. There is a process to take the money to pay you. And so that process has begun. I have spoken to your secretary. We have showed all the letters that we have issued to the Ministry of Finance. As of yesterday, we heard that maybe this week, maybe next week, we would receive something from Ministry of Finance. It's until we receive that, the Ministry of Transport does not have that money sitting with us here to pay you.
How are you living? 15 months without pay.
Grace. It's by grace.
By grace.
Grace.
And you've also been engaged in the Transport Ministry as well. What's their response to the concerns?
The Transport Ministry received the petition and gave a response to these individuals, the members of the Railway Workers Union, given their pickets of government's failure to honor its obligation. And they say that between this week and next week, they'll be looking to resolve the issue, given that 14 months without pay. They are looking to resolve the issue. We can listen to the Chief Director who received the petition from the Railway Workers Union.
The process has begun and the process will work till the end. We do believe that by the end of next week, I was thinking by the end of next week, we do believe we'll receive some kind of response from the Ministry of Finance. And it will be based on that we can determine that by this date or next date, you will be paid. After all, we were at the Labour Commission yesterday, and you heard them. You heard our responses to your issues you raised. And they gave us up to the end of April. We do believe that we will end this issue before April. So please, you take heart. We understand your situation. As with government things, you don't just go and take the money. There is a process to take the money to pay you. And so that process has begun. I have spoken to your secretary. We have showed all the letters that we have issued to the Ministry of Finance. As of yesterday, we heard that maybe this week, maybe next week, we would receive something from Ministry of Finance. It's until we receive that, the Ministry of Transport does not have that money sitting with us here to pay you.
Away from that, there's a looming shortage of tomatoes on markets across Ghana as the Burkina Faso government indefinitely bans the export of the commodity. A letter signed by both the Trade and Agriculture ministers of the Francophone country noted that the ban is necessary to feed the country's national processing units. Consequently, the issuance of the special export authorizations has been suspended, cautioning operators holding valid fresh tomato export permits to complete their export procedures within just 2 weeks. While some tomato vendors at the racecourse market in Kumasi are already bemoaning the decision as they call on government to prioritize the local tomato industry by revamping irrigation systems and local processing facilities. My colleague Emmanuel Bradkweku was at the racecourse market to engage with traders.
In fact, anope and this week and it is a Burkina Abino actually say mama mo export emba hopium etena emano mohana omoji asemi
says yati yamashi because ya anti kutami ya anti jame mimi wo ya woni obi ye no omo ye di dwan ne woni obi ye bibi na wonim se bibi besi a wo bona mane starting kura na adwene wo so se bibi betimi asi na prako pe 2 weeks mempese mu besi wa sasam na eha adwene pa ayen eba so sanso so a Ghana ye ho be kire because se ntosi ni ba bia e won kwa ne okofa ntosi nti esra ba won sore ne enhwe bibi kakra
asane be ko Ghana ban no mo indication say March 16th yana e ba say mama mo be bi mama mo 2 weeks say mo valid permits mo bra na mo be emefantos no eno say omo abom nkae kakra na
omo nka hwe nkire de hu yare ye te nansane ne ne tie ye hu no hwe ye hu no nkire mu bia enim hwe ene de titi dwom hai.
Now, young call into no, minim say seasons be wa mo fe be free Ghana mo call a strong sokofa situation the senate was CCA.
Sasa braha de into say nya de obenye bi wo be Ghana ha. Into say ne yusu weather. Sasa braha wo do bi wo ha enye yie. Gisaye kakra. Sa braha ha de no aye na ho nso ya enye yie. Eye weather na yusu. Sa na tie. Ntinto sin de sese hwa na bi wo. Togo ebi wo ho nso enoso. Woman want to see no do no.
It is an obey day, I'm 2 weeks, but then I'm more crantos in a packing in a banner, then I'm
now who packing to see they are saying some no be packet because you never be a best store. Baby, anyway, baby, who was store baby, I'm a best store. He bet me the abegu one year in a kakra. ana ye wo car container no a fridge wo mu no a enu asimu a enye hwe ye ne bibia sa ye ban no ani se gugu ei ti ye ne bibia ye ne ni daso bia nti nyame ne ye hwe no
nti ekeka koi e pese hu entos bo na betimi akoso ana de na besi
ebetimi akoso wo soro dada e wo soro dada afi wo man no kese Oman no kasi nti free sentos ne hyase ne board ankasa wo nti amai kanko an ebo nti sese na ye free say ebe ba fom kakra man na wono nso aka sese no nje se de man ye ni atutu aka ensem ye hunu de ye
sese da sen
sese ho ye to no 100,000 sefa ebesia 210 21 million and sana with the loading fee expenses case ka with eno esi 4 million ntebesia 25 million egu on
in the coming weeks bet me 30 million and
ebebro se beba side ebebro because kaye stress ma won twa ye sokwata dodo no ayefa no obe hwe no wa maye bia ye pe wo be maye bi nso ano bo be den pa emma dodo kakra bi na beba.
And so I have been speaking with Hajia. She's part of the leadership here at the race course market, and he has been explaining that we should expect a hike in the prices. Anyone didn't come on, but I'm finding out from in those situation Ghana has seen now. When is buying air bomber day say or obeying toast will be an on farm hokra.
If I'm sure best any dia kasaka kra, buying no. Ya de bestra ne kakra ne se nka omwa na se ha no de omufin so betimi aboa se de Burkina ho no kra sebe omutimi aboa masa du saa time dry season ya yenya bidi ba ha ya fi se kan na ya maame no mokọ boriga ene na vrongo mu na ne kofa ntosi de ba ha eno ano mo de ahwe ya ma yesu abedrum pempenso a yesu yetimi etua so a de hwe ye ma eti aba ne ye de ne de besra ne se mo bi betimi aya aboa ye bia omonye no mo so mfa moa ye ne nya bi moa se Burkina ho mo control se ye ma bi mu a ye koya na ye bai yesu so ye ho be chi de bebre nti ye sra ne die mu sa aba ye wo so se enu se na na ma de obeye me dem na na aka no na na ma preko pe ye sra na ne die mu omo moa ye na Ghana ma se ye bre hwe wa hwe adwuma ekura ase afidi enam se kwa hwe wuo ni atete a nipa namu eti ani die mu omumwa ye se de na kanye tete no omukofa bi wo boriga ani ruwango no aban no mumwa eye dam na omode ye no enu abi na omode ye Burkina wo eti wo boy bi wo ha me fensa Ghana yeso ye ho beto ye. Thank
you. And so that's also another leader here at the race course market, and she has been explaining with what the situation here. In fact, the ban has really sparked a conversation on the need for Ghana to actually prioritize its tomato industry here in the country. In fact, they are saying that the Palugu Dam, especially with a lot of promises from previous and successive governments, they are hoping that this will be actualized. And so this has been the current situation here at the race course market in the Ashanti region. My name is Emmanuel Bright-Kweku.
Well, let me take you now to the Ashanti region. Emmanuel Bright-Kweku joins us live via Zoom. Emmanuel, is there any change in the situation from what we reported earlier today?
So firstly, there's no change in the situation as we rightly reported earlier during the day. In fact, this is a ban that is coming from the Burkina Faso government. And so for a majority of them, it's nothing really that is going to change in the course of the time, because according to the statement, they have stated that from March 16, that's the day they issued the statement, up until 2 weeks later, anybody that has a valid exportation permit, they would have to do all their exportation transactions within that 2 weeks. And right after that, any permits that they have will be revoked. And so none of the traders or the transporters, tomato transporters, will be permitted into their country to export tomatoes. And as we already know, Ghana depends on Burkina Faso for a majority of the tomato that we see on the market. In fact, our JoyNews research desk indicates that 99.6% of the tomatoes that we source or that we have on the market are sourced from Burkina Faso. And so for a majority of these traders, they are worried that they are not going to get tomato in the course of time if nothing really is done about it. In fact, they explain that what the situation now is about how they are caught in limbo on where to source tomato from, because during this time, the local farmers, that's our farmers, Ghanaian farmers, are not really planting any, or we don't have tomatoes in our local farms. And so it's going to be very difficult for them to actually source tomato and to feed the thousands or millions of Ghanaians that depend on tomato for their daily meals. And they want, this actually has sparked a conversation about the need for government to prioritize the tomato industry for us to produce our local tomatoes, because over the course of time, successive governments have said that they are going to revamp the Kwalugu Dam, but nothing really happens. In fact, they even told me that the tomato they are now exporting from Burkina Faso, these days they perish easily, unlike before when it was actually, it took time for it to actually, it had a longer shelf life. But now it's kind of, when they buy it, just some few days and it's turning watery and all of that. So they feel that we can actually produce our tomato locally, because they know that some of the tomatoes they source from our farmers are actually better off than the ones that they go to Burkina Faso to source them from. In fact, this is coming on the back of just 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, where we had some tomato transporters who were actually killed, or they were burnt by some Islamist group or some militia group in Burkina Faso. So for them, it's a fear when they go to the town. And in fact, now they want the conversation, the government, to actually prioritize the tomato industry. So for this is actually the situation. So in the coming weeks, we do not know what the government will do to ensure that, to cushion all the consumers and even the traders across the country. So for this is currently the situation here in the Ashanti region.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel Braikweko. And you made mention of the numbers. We will be engaging tomato importers shortly. But first, let's show you how self-sufficient Ghana is when it comes to tomato production. And that's coming up on your screen. We've put together some data from our research desk. Now, shockingly, 38%, that's how self-sufficient we are as a country. And this is data from the year 2024. We only produce 38% of the actual amount of tomato we consume as a country. Now, we did a breakdown when it comes to Ghana's national tomato demand versus local net production. And this is in metric tons, what you're seeing on your screens right now. In terms of national demand, 1.3 million metric tons of tomatoes. That's how much we demand annually as a country. Unfortunately, local production is a little above 500,000, and that is the problem we're facing, because then we have a shortfall of close to 800,000, which we have to rely on foreigners to get it. And this is data from the Ministry of Food and Agriculture put together by our research desk here at JoyNews. Now, when it comes to Ghana's importation of tomato, we spend about $22 million to import tomato as a country. And when it comes to processed tomato, we even spend more. So the tin tomato in your house, yes, this is the reason why, because we spend so much more on importation of processed tomato, $77 million. Why is this conversation important, really? Because we're looking at Burkina Faso. Why is the concern now from traders that we may be facing a possible shortage of tomato in the country? Because it's clear, based on our data, we know that 99.6% of all the tomato we import as a country comes from Burkina Faso. And it's part of the data that we put together here on the JoyNews channel, just showing you how grim the picture is and why we should be concerned. Should we start looking at how our local industry is performing and what's the way forward? That's a conversation we'll be having shortly here on the JoyNews channel. Well, join me now is Eric Osei-Tufo. He's chairman of the Tomato Importers Association of Ghana. He joins me on the phone with more. I'm wondering just how badly we'll be affected looking at the ban in tomato supply, especially from Burkina.
Hello?
Mr. Eric, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Great. I was wondering how we would be affected by this ban on the export and even import of tomatoes from Burkina Faso. What should we expect in coming days?
Yeah, actually, you'll be affected. The whole nation will be affected because, as for Ghana, our daily delicacies that we have been eating, all based on fresh tomato. You can't take any meal without tomato. In Africa and West Africa as a whole, Ghana is the leading consumers of tomato, fresh tomato. So the ban is actually going to affect consumers, the traders, and a nation as a whole, because as I'm speaking now, there is no tomato anywhere in our country at the moment. So actually the news is very sad to Ghanaians, because coming month, meaning from April going, there will be no tomato in the country. Number one, the price of tomato is going to be very high. And even if it is high, how are you going to get it for preparing your food? So it's a very sad news to us.
And
because our local tomato will start coming on May. And they've given us only 2 weeks date, that from Monday to the next Monday. That's 2 weeks coming from Monday. We are no more going to Burkina Faso for any tomato to Ghana.
So why not consider importing in bulk so that it can cushion us for the period whilst we await our own local producers to provide us with tomato locally?
For bulk importation, in Ghana we don't have any storage facility at the moment I'm speaking. So if we are to go and buy it in bulk, where are we going to store it? That is why we go on a daily basis. Every day we import about 50 trucks, 40 trucks a day. Now they've given us only 2 weeks to stop going there. And we must obey the rules and the regulations of Burkina Faso, because it is coming directly from the government. The government says he's going to use the rest of his tomato for processing. So what can we do? We have nothing to do.
And so how soon will we be feeling the impacts? Say, for example, the 2 weeks elapse and then you're done. You cannot go to Burkina Faso anymore. How soon are we going to be affected?
There will be shortage of tomato in the country. As for the fresh tomato, we can't get it anywhere. And we don't have any country within our sub-region where we can get tomato to feed our local market.
Are you saying we don't have any country, even in the sub-region as we speak?
Yes.
So there are no alternatives?
No alternative.
I see.
When you go to Togo, you can't get it. There was a time somebody introduced me to Benin. I went there and I only got 2 trucks of tomato. And 2 trucks of tomato cannot even feed Greater Accra region. Greater Accra region always consume about 15 trucks daily. How can you use 2 trucks to feed them? And even at the moment, I don't know whether they have it or not. And when you get to Côte d'Ivoire, the same thing. Because Côte d'Ivoire, they also have been going to Burkina for the tomato. Even Togolese also go there. So in West Africa, they are the leading producer. I mean, during the rain season, from December to May, Burkina Faso is leading. The major importation of tomato is from Burkina Faso to Ghana, as well as Côte d'Ivoire and Togo too.
I see. You tell us to brace ourselves for price hikes, but the last time I went to the market, already tomato is very expensive. I bought just 3 pieces for 20 Ghana cedis. And so we're wondering, are you going to control this during the shortage? Is there going to be like a ceiling as to how much you can sell a tomato? Should we expect
Even
that?
that time, when our people were shot and burned into ashes, the association took it upon ourselves to stop our trials going. Some few people who managed to bring it, that It's why that you found some tomato in the country, but the price was very high. Now, there is a communique binding anybody to come after 2 weeks to buy tomato, meaning we can't get it anywhere. So there will be none in the market. Even if we have some, I don't know, we can't get any way to enter into Burkina territory because they've instructed all their border areas to be alert of the communique they've sent. So they will be all be alert. When you are found, they will send your truck and the tomato to their processing company, meaning to their processing factory for processing, free of charge. You won't get anything. And a penalty will be issued to you to pay on the vehicle before your vehicle will be released to you.
And clearly this exposes Ghana's over-reliance on experts. What urgent action should government take immediately to ensure that we deal with this effectively?
Now the government is aware of the ban. Even yesterday, National Security called me to attend a meeting with them. But it's rather unfortunate I couldn't make it up. I led my General Secretary to go and meet them. He met them, and then they discussed the same issue that you are asking me. So the government is aware of the ban. So we are looking for them to what they can do to help so that we can get tomato. Either they will talk to the Burkina authority to extend the ban, or I don't know what to do next.
But I'm quite interested in this meeting. What was the outcome?
Hello?
Can you hear me, Mr. Eric? I'm quite interested in the outcome of the meeting you had with the security officials.
We are now looking for the authorities to say good news to us. Other than that, I don't know. They are now working on it. But the possibility that they can say they've extended the date. If not, there is nothing we can do.
And did they give you a timeline as to when they'll get in touch with you?
Pardon? I didn't hear you well.
Did they give you a timeline? You say you're waiting for government response. Did they give you a timeline?
There was no any timeline. They said we will hear from them because they are now engaging the Burkinabe's counterpart, starting from yesterday night when they met. So we are now looking for the government to come out with something good.
But as importers, were you even prepared for a disruption like this? Is there a solution?
The solution is the government have to intervene so that we can produce our local tomato here. We have a lot of land, and we have farmers who are ready to farm. So what we can say, or the advice that I can give it to the government, is to speed up so that our local farmers can also farm more, even during the dry season from December to May.
I see. But you told me that
they need to support the local farmers, the necessary input, so that they can farm during December to May. The period that we need tomato in Ghana is only December to May that we do cross-border trade. That time we do import more tomato into our country. Because this time there is none in the country, so whatever we consume here comes from Burkina Faso.
And you tell me that in May we should expect locally produced tomatoes, right? Is that the case?
Exactly. In May, getting to May ending, tomato will be coming from Begro in the eastern region, Asante Atumagogo in the Asante region, Doma Hinkro in the Brown region. They will all start producing tomato. They normally don't farm during the dry season because there is lack of irrigation to support them to farm.
I see. So what this means is that the shortage we're likely to experience would only feel the impact for roughly about a month or two. Is that the case?
Yes, exactly. Actually, a month of April, there will be a very high shortage of tomato in the country.
And as consumers, what would you propose we do moving forward?
This is what I've already said. We are now looking for the government even to call for an emergency meeting with farmers, traders, and government officials, especially Ministry of Agriculture, to dialogue. They need to call the tomato architects to come on board so that we have a serious discussion about this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eric. We appreciate your time here on The Pulse. Well, meanwhile, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture admonishes farmers to take part in dry season farming to boost production to help stabilize food supplies.
With the ban of the tomato export, it's something that we need to further interrogate. I read a memo yesterday, and it's something that I need to further find out whether it's true and why they've banned it, and then after that seek further clarification on the way forward with the ban. So last year I did go to some communities in the north to encourage them to produce tomatoes in the dry season. And so this dry season I went back, and most of them had, listened to the advice, or most of them had, at least because of the encouragement I gave them, most of them had gone into tomato production, and some of them were doing quite well. I visited Garu, I went to Zari, I went to Timpani, I went to Talensi, and there were tomato farmers who were, harvesting their tomatoes. And so I met all of them, and I encouraged them that, look, they should let me know the support that they need to scale up for the next dry season, which is, let's say, towards the end of this year. And most of them were extremely excited. And I said, look, government is committed to helping them to scale up production. It might not, this, us going to Burkina Faso to buy the tomatoes and stuff, it might not end almost immediately. But I think that once they get encouraged, within 3 or 4 years, we should be self-sufficient when it comes to tomato production. I also went to Navrongo, the VI irrigation dam. There were some trials going there from FSRP, which is the West African Food Resilience Program. That one too is on board. And then Akomadan as well. I went there, and then there were some trials in tomatoes. And so hopefully by the end of this year, we will scale up production in terms of our tomato production. And hopefully by next year, we'll have a lot of tomatoes on the market.
Well, let's head now to Parliament, where the minority is accusing government of manipulating economic data to paint an overly positive picture of the economy, insisting that the reality on the ground tells a very different story. While speaking at a meeting with the Ghana Union of Traders Association, the ranking member on the Economy and Development Committee of Parliament, Kujapon Nkrumah, alleged that government is using a certain method to achieve favorable economic indicators despite persistent hardships faced by businesses and consumers. According to him, while official data may suggest improvements in key indicators, traders and ordinary Ghanaians continue to grapple with high costs, weak purchasing power and economic uncertainty, raising questions about the credibility of government's claims.
Just yesterday, the policy rate, which used to be 15.5%, has again been slashed by 100 basis, and it's currently at 14%. Even though we know that the commercial banks, as far as lending rates are concerned, are not, responding very well to the lending rates, because once policy rate keeps going down, we expect a corresponding decrease in the lending rates. But the situation that is pertaining currently, I think it is not the best. I just spoke to some commercial banks this morning to find out from them their current lending rate, and some are lending as far as 22-24%, which I think it is not the best. Even if we have to talk about the previous policy rate of 15.5%, I expect them, to be doing well in their lending rate. If you talk about some countries within the sub-region, Cote d'Ivoire lending rate is a single digit. It's about 6%. Senegal is lending about 8.4%. But if you want to talk about the economy within the West Africa sub-region, if you take Nigeria, Ghana is the second biggest economy. So I don't see why countries like Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire are lending on a single digit, and then Ghana's commercial banks continue to lend at a double digit. So once policy rate keeps coming down, I expect Bank of Ghana as the regulator, to impress upon the commercial banks to also reduce their lending rate, so that the business community or the private sector can borrow to expand their businesses and then create employment for their youth. Because we all know that the public sector currently employs just over 1 million people. All the employment in this country is being generated by the private sector. And if the private sector want to expand their businesses, they need to get capital injection for them to be able to expand their businesses and then create, employment for our youth.
Well, we've also been engaging traders that took aim at both the NDC and MPP, accusing successive governments of failing to enforce laws that restrict foreign participation in the retail sector, allowing non-Ghanaians to dominate local markets. Listen to Guta President Clement Boateng.
The minority and the majority, because it is you, the politicians, that have allowed these foreigners to flood our markets and then trying as much as possible to displace the locals and then take the market completely. A critical example is what we are experiencing in the mining sector. Now, all our water bodies have been polluted by these Chinese people. And these Chinese people are being brought by you, the politicians. The Chinese people are being brought by you, the politicians. Because it is said oftentimes that both the minority and the majority are being blamed for the galamsey that is going on, because you have your people doing the galamsey and it is being done by these foreigners, because you are the people who bring these foreigners, these Chinese people, into the country and then be doing this galamsey and have polluted our water bodies. The same thing is happening in the retail sector now. Now they have taken over every aspect of the retail sector. Let's talk about the constructive sector, that is the mining sector. It's been taken over by foreigners. The financial sector, the banks and all those fintech areas have been taken over by the foreigners. The communication sector has been taken over by the foreigners. Now the automobile sector is also being taken over by the foreigners. And the small retail that we are doing, that even if you are illiterate, you can even do the retail trading, is also being taken over by foreigners. And
well, we can now listen to the minority. They've been questioning the narrative around the fall in inflation, arguing that the so-called improvements are not being felt in the markets. Listen.
You would recall that we have always insisted that the methods, Mr. President, the methods that this administration is using to achieve the numbers that they are publishing to you, those methods should be interrogated. But we have always said that it's not enough for your child to go to town and come back home with a brand new car for you to be happy. You need to examine the method with which the child brought that car and ask yourself, is it sustainable? Is it an appropriate method? So take inflation. We have consistently said that the method they are using to bring inflation down is sterilization. What sterilization means is that they mop up money from the system, because if people don't have money in their pocket, they can't exercise what we call in economics effective demand. And if they can't demand, prices will either stay where they are, or you, the seller, at a point will decide, let me reduce my prices and get rid of the stock. Now, we told you that in 2025, they sterilized about 62 billion cedis from the economy. They mopped it up and literally parked it at the central bank. It's never happened before in our history. It's what they call the shock approach to achieve that number of 3.3. That is what the governor is now saying, that the mop-up exercise has cost him about 17 billion cedis to bring it down to 3.3. But you see, that is to remove money from the system. It hasn't dealt with the cost of production, because electricity is going up, labor is going up, other inputs in production. Fees and charges, as you have rightly mentioned, in some cases more than even 100%. So the consequence is that you will see 3.3 inflation, and you have rightly said that the first problem you are worried about is that, however, in the market, effective demand has gone down. A lot of people are telling you they don't have money to be able to buy. It's because of the method they are using.
While the minority leader, Alexander Feyomarkin, has also been raising concerns about the cost of energy and the issue of fast-running prepaid.
I suggested to our respected colleague, the Minister of Energy, that one way to look at job creation, incentivizing the industry, is to pursue these reforms. Pursuing the reforms means don't be in a hurry to increase tariffs. Because when you increase tariffs, what you do is that you allow people to now connect illegally. A lot of the factories, industry players have their own means of tapping into cheaper electricity. So rather, pursue the loss reduction program. The loss reduction program was to deal with the old meters and ensure that as many households and industries were metered. So you had some 6 or 7 companies that had brought in the assembling plant and were assembling meters. This was a good policy. As we speak, I've not seen any major, attempt at reforming the energy sector. But they found it convenient to now say they want to increase tariffs. And within a short period, tariffs increased by over 28%. Last week, they announced some 4% reduction. But that means nothing. In fact, the reality is that synonymous with your argument about the ports, and I'll come to the AI thing, where you used to pay, say, 2 cedis, and now you are paying 4 cedis. That's what is happening in the electricity. I was in Winneba 2 weeks ago. We usually buy 2,000 for a month, and I'd gone to Winneba on a weekend. Monday morning, the gentleman said we're using gensets. I said, why? He said, Chief, he prepaid NASA. I said, how?
Well, let's do other stories here on The Pulse. Burn injuries remain a major yet preventable public health concern in Ghana, with children most at risk due to unsafe living and cooking conditions. Beyond Burns International, a survivor-led organization, has spent the past 2 years leading prevention and education efforts in the Greater Accra region in collaboration with key partners. Well, join me in the studio to talk about their upcoming tour as well as how you can prevent burns. Is a burn survivor herself, Judith Kato Addison. She is in the studio. I also have with me the Deputy Director of Safety at the Ghana National Fire Service, DO1, Michael Atukosa. I also have DCNO, Safwa Ompong. She is a nurse at the National Reconstructive Plastic Surgery and Burns Unit at Kolebu Teaching Hospital. Thank you so much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's great to have this conversation, but I'll start with Judith. You have a personal story to share because you've been in a situation where you had to fight for your life.
Right.
Let's start with that story.
Right.
How did it happen?
So I had come back from school one afternoon and I was hungry. I met my mom seated in front of the shop, which used to be in front of our house, and I told her I wanted some food to eat. We concluded that I could make some yams for myself. So I went to the kitchen, cut up the yams, and then I waited for my food. We had a small tabletop stove. It was a gas stove, and I waited for my food. After every few minutes, I'll check if the food was well cooked. But at some point when I wanted to check if it was well cooked, I realized that the napkin I had used had this thin film of smoke coming out of it.
Wow.
I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think much of it. All I thought was to just get the napkin and get my food. And before I could reach the napkin, I just heard a loud explosion and my body was on fire. I mean, before I could pull it from where it was, my whole body was on fire. I started screaming. There were people in the house that just saw me pour just some small water on me. And my dad had also just walked in from work, and he was told his daughter was on fire, and he rushed me to the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. At that time, we didn't have the Reconstructive Plastic Surgery and Burns Center that we have now. So it was the children's ward, and there was one room that was assigned for burns, and I joined. I waited hours. From about 3 p.m. till 10 p.m., I didn't have anybody attend to me. And I was just getting worse with time. Yeah, that's how it happened.
And it's shocking because you're now an advocate. So we'll come back to what inspired you to actually take up that mandate. But let me come to the fire service, because you have dealt with a lot of fire incidences. And let's look at the data in the country, really. When it comes to burns, what are the figures you have?
I can't say it offhand.
Okay.
I think that data would sit well with the Ministry of Health and the burns unit, because we work with them. And what I can say is that we have had several, or responded to several outbreaks of fires where we have seen victims being trapped and burnt, and as she narrated, the pictures kept rolling, and when it happens like that, we rescue them, hand them over to the ambulance unit, and they take them to the hospital. But I think that is something that is happening and is becoming rampant. Most of the burns, like you said, happens as a result of explosions in the kitchen, because mothers, especially women, go to the kitchen using their phones, and as a result, when it rings and the radioactives are emitted, it interacts with the gas. If there's a leakage, then the explosion will take place. The scenario she just painted, maybe the napkin was there closer to the burner, and by reason of convection or conduction, it started burning but smothered, and perhaps there was a leakage, and when the concentration was ripe, it exploded. So it is very important that when we go to the kitchen, we don't take our phones there. And it is happening. Then the occurrences, it's making the victims more and more. But I think the figures, I don't have them often, but I think the Ministry of Health can share with that.
And I'll come to the Ministry of Health, but let's look at the national picture. With a lot of fire incidents that you have tried as a fire service, I know, to tame. Apart from cooking, what are the other leading causes?
Very good questions. Apart from the domestic setting, recently we've been having this BRV incident. BRV has to do with a bulk vehicle, road vehicle that carries the LPG tanks and all that involved in an accident. People, when
it's involved in an asset, people gather. And as they gather, you see, I always tell people that the phone we use is a bomb in the making, because anytime you pick it and you activate it, something dissipates, all right, without you seeing it. So as it dissipates and there is a concentration and it's ripe, there will be an explosion. Apart from that, when you trigger, any trigger of the phone produces microsparks. And that microspark you don't see with your eyes. And that when that interacts with any vapor or any gas, it triggers explosion. You see a lot of people using containers to go and siphon, they chase the bullet and all that. All these things, even shoe, if you are not wearing the right prescribed shoe in that environment and there's friction, it can spark and the explosion will take place.
And I'm quite worried about this because sometimes you see when there's an incident, especially a fire incident, people go around with their phones, they're trying to video what is happening. And for you, that's wrong, right?
It's wrong. When it happens, there's always operational-wise, you create a cordon and there's always a hot zone and a cold zone. And from where the incident is about 300 meters, nobody's supposed to stand there. Or everybody must be evacuated to a safer place. But in Ghana, when it immediately happens, you'd find people rushing to the scene, going to take videos and all that. And even the masses alone can trigger an explosion. And it's not good. It's not a good practice.
I see. Let me come to the nurse among us, because she has experience with some of these cases. When we're done on the scene, they come straight to the hospital, and so you have an experience. What are some of the cases you have handled so far, and how severe are they?
Okay, thank you very much. Most of the cases that we handle are basically children, a lot of children. And then with the children to mostly hot water. Hot water, that's cars, burns. And then from the children, you can go to the electrical burns. We get electrical burns a lot often. And then we have chemical burns. The chemical burns do happen, but it's not as much as gas explosion. And nowadays, we have been getting inhalational burns. Inhalational burns, that's from smoke. And it's also very common. So basically, that is the cases that we normally handle at the hospital. But with all the cases that come, one of the things that is very peculiar is that first aid management was not done.
And that's quite important, because Judith makes the point that she had to wait for hours to be attended to. How critical is first aid? What should we even do when we come across such scenarios where we are in contact with an individual who has experienced burns?
Okay, thank you very much. With first aid management, as I'm speaking now, I want every household to listen. When it's hot water that has been poured on the child, or the child was maybe taking a napkin or something and then the food poured on the child, all what you need is water. Water, water, water. Continuous water, not cold water, just tepid water, normal water. You pour on that person continuously, 10 to 20 minutes. After that, you wipe the person, keep the person warm, and take the person to the hospital. When you don't do the first aid management, as the person is moving from one hospital to the other, the person keeps on burning. So you go to this hospital, they tell you, we don't treat burns. You go here, we don't have bed. As you go on, the person is still burning. But when the water has been poured on this person continuously for 10 to 20 minutes, it breaks that cycle. It stops the burning process before you move. So something that is small will not become a bigger burn. It will remain a small burn.
And that is just for, is that for all scenarios, especially if you're in contact with hot water, for example? Is that the same thing we have to do?
For hot water, food, oil, soups, gas explosion, they are all water. Chemicals, they are all water. But when you come to electricity, it's not water.
It's not water first.
It's not water first. When you come to electricity...
So what should we do first?
Yes.
I'm quite interested in that.
Do you have an exit here?
Oh, yeah, there's one outside.
No, from here. Do you have any exit somewhere?
Oh, no, this is quite enclosed. But there's an exit just outside.
So in case...
yes, an alternative exit.
So in case this side is burning, where do you pass? This side is burning. Where do you pass?
Certainly, we'll drill and walk through. Just to make sure everyone is safe. But we actually have emergency exits.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's good that in a facility like this, you should have an exit. Because fire can trigger at any time. So you should have an exit wherever you are. So modern buildings are now having exits. So you have an entry point and then an exit point in the same facility. So like here, if this one is the entry, there should be an exit somewhere so that when, in case there's fire, you run through the side so that you will not be affected by the fire. Are we okay? Okay, so with electricity, electricity has an entry point and then an exit point. So it enters through the person either from the hand or the leg, and then it decides where to come from, where to exit. So it can pass through your hand and decide to exit from your legs. Wherever it likes, it decides to exit, because we all have our own electrical impulses in ourselves that we call SA node that generates electricity in our body. So when electricity comes into your body, you don't pour water, but rather you look for the main source of supply of electricity, and then you put it off. So there should be a switch somewhere here that can be put on and then put off. So they put off so that all this light goes off. So the same place, in case there's fire here, that place should be put off first. After you have put it off, then you make sure the person who is going to save the other person, make sure she has a rubber sole.
I see.
You have a rubber sole. And then make sure you have a dry cloth.
Dry cloth for the victim?
Yes, a dry cloth
or for myself.
A stick to be able to draw the person from where the person is attached to the naked wire.
But if I draw you from a place with a stick, you will fall.
Yes, yes. So you will fall.
Okay.
You will fall. That is, the electricity is already off.
Okay.
So I'm saving your life, but making sure that I put you on the floor first, but I don't have to touch you. If I touch you, then it means I can also be electrocuted. So I have to save your life by making sure that I use a dry cloth, make sure I wear a rubber sole, chow or slippers, and then I go closer to you and then draw you with the dry cloth or push you with the dry cloth onto the floor. Then I can pour the water on you.
Then you can pour water?
Yes. Now you are not closer to the electrical source. You are not closer to the electricity. Now electricity is off. But rather, when we see the fire, we are quick to call the fire service. Instead of saving lives, putting those things off, we are ready to call fire service to come and save us. So there are little things we can do for our own self in the house. In your house, when you go home, ask, where is our main source that supplies this building with electricity? In case there's fire anywhere, you put that side off, and that is it. You don't even have to call the fire service to come. And the smoke that comes out of this fire, that causes the inhalational burns. Because when you inhale a lot of the smoke, it burns the lungs. And when the lungs are burned, there's no way you can be able to breathe properly. Because instead of breathing the oxygen, you are rather breathing carbon monoxide. And carbon monoxide burns to the blood 200 to 400%. Wow. So it becomes dangerous to our body. And that normally kills a lot of people. So in case there's gas explosion and there's smoke, those people will inhale a lot of smoke. If there's fire, those people will inhale a lot of smoke. And the smoke, that is the more dangerous one, that burns the lungs. So with electricity, not water first.
I see. And I'll come back to you because there are lots of myths about what to do when you're around a victim. I was told you have to pour milk in their mouth at some point in time. I'll come back to you to give us education on that, and also the fire service, because you are dealing with some of these cases, and so you tell us what we should do in scenarios like this moving forward. But I'd like to come to Judith, because you've survived this.
Right.
But it was a difficult journey for you.
Yeah.
How did you overcome some of the stigmatization that came with the aftermath of what you experienced?
You know, when you walk out of the hospital, nobody prepares you for the real healing that takes place outside of the walls of the hospital. You think that the physical, once your wounds are healed, then life returns to normal. But I got back home, and then it was definitely I was the talk of the town at the time. Very few people knew anybody that had survived the extent of burns that I survived at the time. And so people started taking turns visiting me at home. And just the feedback, lets you know that everything is different. People who used to think very highly of you think that now there's a limitation on what you can do or how far your life can go, And, the spotlight is no longer on you. I mean, among relatives, that now that it shifts. People talk about other people, and then when it's your turn, it's like a pity party, kind of a thing. What really helped me was what I was able to do in school. Because at this point at school, I was very brilliant. And so despite the stares and the comments, whenever in class I was doing so well, it kind of boosted my feeling, general confidence, making me feel like this is where I wanted to be. So at this point, I spent a lot of time in class and with my books, because it was one area that I didn't feel getting judged or discriminated against. Because when you give a right answer in class, it's a right answer. And it doesn't matter whether you're a survivor or not, So at that point, it felt like a fair playing field. But whenever I was outside, when we had to play, I couldn't play. I was always seated. I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand for a while. So a lot of that, when you have to do something, you would have to be isolated, and then other people do it for a while. And then it got to a point where I started getting used to it, that this is what I cannot do for now, and this is what I could do, and then I'll indulge in the things I could do. There were many moments where I also cried because of how people addressed or referred to me, and how I felt people thought my life had kind of ended. It was no longer bright, and who would even marry you is another matter to be discussed. I mean, there were many points where I cried. Because
did you receive any psychological support?
At that time, no. I still haven't till this point, but I had to work myself through it, You hear it, you cry. There was a time I just told myself, I'm not going to cry over this anymore. So I started telling myself everything people have said. So I get used to it in my head. Then when you say it, I just take it as one of the comments people make. Because in Ghana, people do not mind. Somebody can actually stop my mom, like, what happened to your daughter? And my mom has to narrate the same story over and over again. And many times people will stop you in the shopping mall and they're like, I have this cream and you can use it here and there. And they do not mind. Like, at this point, I'm a grown up. And don't you think I have already tried something on my scars? But yes, people tend to talk in our community. So it is what it is.
Oh, wow. And your story is quite inspiring, because now you're trying to change that narrative.
Right.
On your own. You have your own organization.
Right.
And tell me about the work you have done so far.
So we've been working for about 2 years now. Definitely could not do this on my own. It started with family and friends, and then I had to reach out to like state institutions So I went to Kolebu and then I went to the Ghana National Fire Service so that we can do this together. Definitely they would bring in more weight and help us solve this better than I could do it on my own. Yes, so we started with a donation to the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, which was the first thing we did. Then we started putting survivors together to do education in schools. So we go to schools to educate children on hazards that they find at home and how they can stay away from these things at home, and making them, ideally we are making them champions of burns prevention in their schools, so they can stand and say, this is a hazard. And when you go home, you tell your mother that this thing, you're charging your phone with so many other things in the same socket and it is not good. So we show them the pictures of what not to do so that they can themselves identify these things at home. So that's the school. We've done marketplaces, awareness in the market through our walk, the health walk, and then stop at the market to talk about this. We've done skills training for burn survivors, for especially those who would need either a first or a second skill. So if you already have something you're doing, we are giving you the skills so that you can make double income. And if you do not have anything because you haven't been able to integrate or reintegrate properly into society because of your fiscal scars, then we are saying that learn this so you can do it on your own. So we've done that as well.
And it's quite inspiring because we're looking at the impact now. And I'll come to you because you also are going to take this to other regions.
Right.
You have an upcoming tour.
Right.
We'll talk about that. But I'd like to come to Mr. Michael because when we hear of burns, we look at the ripple effect. But there's actually the generation point. And for some of us here in Accra, living in rented apartment, there's really no exit point in terms of the building structure. So how do we deal with situations like fire cases that we report in the house so that we can limit the impact on us?
We are now engaging the property owners.
Okay.
There's now a law, LI 2249, that's mandate that residential facilities are able to provide alarm system, exit, and extinguishers. You know, all these fatalities and accidents occur, and you can place them under two categories, either non-compliance or accidental. If it is accident, then there must be a contingency to cushion to help you, to help reduce the impact. All right, that has to do with the exit we are talking about. That has to do with an extinguisher. That has to do a measure that will help you, you know, protect you to be able to be safe. All right. But when it comes to non-compliance, like say, we have a lot of houses that are overloading the distribution boards, all right, and they are doing a lot of looping and connecting to sockets to overload and connect to a single circuiting that is giving pressure to the workload. And so we are now going to introduce what we call thermal imaging device into our inspection regimes. That would ensure that every premises in Ghana, all right, every premises in Ghana is inspected to ensure that hotspots are identified, reports are generated, and recommendations are made. If the installation is posing a risk to the occupancy, we take measure to evacuate them and close it down and all that. So measures are being taken backed by the law to ensure that occupancy is safe so that we don't experience such fatalities anymore.
And we're also seeing that even fire service personnel in line of duty, you are getting exposed to some of these things.
Just last week.
Just last week.
Nine firemen were burnt.
And so how do we deal with this effectively moving forward?
We are having it dealt with in a multi-sectorial approach.
Okay.
So we are engaging other stakeholders. For example, we are in touch with POST, we are in touch with COMAC, we are in touch with NPA to have some simulations, to have an engagement training for drivers, and also the public, heighten the awareness and the role they have to play in an real emergency situation, so that when it happens, they know how to conduct themselves, and when they have to, what they have to do so that it doesn't happen at all.
I see. I'll come back to you, but let me go to Nesafwa at this point in time, because I want to look at the myth that we have heard when it comes to different emergency cases, what we should do. I was told at a point in time that if the person is being electrocuted, you have to immediately administer milk once you save the person. Is that the case? And if it's a burn, you have to apply shea butter on it so that you reduce the blisters. Is that the case?
No.
It's not, right? So let's deal with the myths.
They are all myths. So it's just a hearsay that has been handed over from generation to generation, and there's no truth in it.
Okay.
Some even come to the hospital with stews on their burns.
Stew?
Yes. Some will tell them put milk, they put milk. Some will tell them put oil, they put oil. Some will tell them put tomatoes, they put tomatoes, onions, fish, and other things, eggs, and all those things.
Wow.
Instead of just the water. Some even use paste, Pepsodent.
On the burn?
On the burns. Some recently we have been getting children with Kivo pepper. Pepper on the burns.
They applied pepper
yes,
on
they apply pepper. Some even go to as far as cow dung on the burns. So by the time they come to the hospital, it is already infected. You don't need all this. All that you need is water. All that you need is water, water, water. Normal water, tepid water. You don't need hot water. You don't need cold water. Just tepid water. That is the first aid. Clean the person up. Just pour it. Like I said before, 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes. If it's your hand, you can dip your hand into the barrel or the bucket full of water for 10 to 20 minutes. After that, just remove it and then clean it and then go to the hospital. You have stopped the burning process. Once you stop the burning process, it cannot progress again. But if you don't stop the burning process, it will just generate to become a bigger burns. So something small here can even go further to the upper limbs. So you don't need any milk, you don't need shea butter, you don't need all this. After the burns is healed and you have scars, that is where you need your shea butter.
Okay.
But the fresh burns doesn't need it, doesn't need the shea butter.
And
yes.
in this day and age where we have plastic surgery, we know that there are also reconstructive surgeries. Is it expensive?
Yes.
How can individuals who are victims actually access these services?
Okay. First, let me talk about the degrees of burns.
Okay.
Then that one will help you to understand why some people will need the plastic surgery. In our skin here, there are two layers, the epidermis and the dermis. So what we see here is the epidermis. And the epidermis is the dermis. We have subcutaneous and other things under. So when this color that you see is off, that is the first degree burns. So when there are some scratches on it, it becomes first degree. When it goes deeper and clears your skin, it becomes a second degree. If it goes deeper to the dermis, then it becomes third degree. So the third degree can even go deeper into your bones, and that's where we can do amputation for some of the patients.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So we have degrees.
Oh.
The first degree, the second degree, or the third degree, that's superficial burns, the superficial partial burns, the deep partial, and then the deep dermal. So with the superficial burns, when you come to the hospital, it's supposed to be healed within 5 to 2 weeks. So normally we don't admit them unless it is big, then we admit. So we normally see the superficial burns, that's the first degree, and then we do whatever we are supposed to do, and we ask them, you can go home and come 3 days, 4 days, or 5 days. So they are the superficial burns. It is not very deep. And they don't need plastic surgery. The second degree, which is the superficial partial, they have to take almost 3 weeks. So we admit them in the hospital and then we manage them. After 3 weeks, if that wound is not healed, that is where we enter into plastic surgery.
And it can be done locally?
It can be done locally. But if
does our national health insurance card, does it cover those services?
No, please.
So we have to pay for it?
Yes, you have to pay for it. And that's the most
Do we
sad
have a
aspect.
cost, roughly 10,000, 5,000?
It depends.
On the degree?
On the degree.
Oh, I see.
It depends
degree of
on the
burns.
degree of burns. And some people can have percentages. We have percentages of burns too as well. We have 5%, 10%, 20%, 50%. So in case you have 50%, most of the time it's very difficult doing plastic surgery for somebody who has a 50% burns, which means half of your body is already burnt. And if it's half of your body is gone, we normally use our own skin, so we have to scrape the person's own skin to correct the deformity.
Oh, I see.
We don't have a grown skin.
Oh, I
no,
see.
We don't have a grown skin. So we use your own skin to reconstruct or cover the deformities.
How about using the skins of individuals who have passed? Do we have that kind of system operating? We don't have...
Ghana, we don't have.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think somebody will go for his dead body and see the whole skin scraped off and then...
But it's an avenue we can explore, is it not? And so as we wrap up the conversation, I'll take your final words, all of you.
The whites can donate their skin. They will say, oh, I'll be burnt, or I don't need my skin, so you can take off my skin. But even that skin, the maximum that it can take on somebody's skin is 2 weeks. It can reject it after 2 weeks. Because we are individuals. Everybody has his own blood group and different make.
Can I get a family member to donate their skin for me?
You can get a family member, but still 2 weeks. Even twins, 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that makes it very difficult doing plastic surgery for a bigger burns like 50%. But like 20%, 10%, 5%, it can be done. But it's expensive, and it ranges between 20 to 50,000 Ghana cedis.
Lots of money, and
it involves a lot managing burns.
Judith, because you have an upcoming tour, and you're also helping victims, psychologically and physically as well. Tell us more about that.
So over the past few years, we have been doing this education in the Greater Accra region, and it seemed like we centered it here. And for us to be able to deepen our impact, we have to reach a larger population. So this year, we decided to embark on a regional tour. We are going to access 5 regions, Greater Accra, of course, Eastern, Western, Central, and Volta region. And want to do the same things we've done here, go to radio stations and TV stations and provide this essential education on all the platforms that are there. And then we want to adapt schools that we would give the education to the children who will become ambassadors, and then to make sure that teachers can continue or perpetuate this after we have left. So we leave them with teaching, learning materials after our first encounter with them, and then we follow up with them so they can continue to start like a pilot. So we are doing this in all of these regions. So we'll go to the hospital, we'll go to a marketplace, then we'll go to schools, and then reach out to a minimum of 25 radio TV stations in these regions.
And I know psychological support is quite key because of the story you've shared with us.
Right.
Is that also part of something you're looking at, how to provide individuals who are already victims with psychological support?
At this point, I'll say that we encourage every burns survivor to join Beyond Burns International, because we have a burns survivor support group. So in this support group, we have a psychologist and a physiotherapist, and even a doctor. And then there's us survivors who would share our experiences. You want to know how other people are handling the burns. You know, sometimes people feel like they are the worst in the community they find themselves in. And then you might not know that there's another person in the same community that has suffered the same kind of fate that might be handling it a lot better than you are. And sometimes it's just this peer support that lets people know that they are not alone, that helps them to reintegrate in the society. If you have to speak to the psychologist, we would direct you, because sometimes you speak to people and you can clearly tell that no, this person needs professional help, you know, because I can say how I went through it and everything, but there's something, they even have to take some medications, they would have to, so that they can get back to thinking well of themselves again.
So let me wrap up with this, Michael, and as well as Safwa. We'll just do 1 minute each. We know that response time is always a challenge when we call the fire service. Is it something that you're working on to at least improve moving forward?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. We are hoping that in the near future we'll have emergency lanes, all right? But notwithstanding, we are trying to have, considering the growth. Fortunately, unfortunately, in Africa, we don't grow vertically. We grow horizontally. So depending on the spread and how fast we are going, strategically we have to open fire stations and get. We thank God that government now is working very hard to have fire engines, more fire engines to be deployed at strategic areas. That one, by proximity, you wouldn't have fire. When you have fire, you would have the closest fire engine to respond to fire scenes, so that it will be very quick. So we would get there very soon. And to add to it, let me say that the parents who would always charge their phones and leave it unattended, please be careful, because the children who are crawling and moving and want to put everything in their mouth would want to put the cord in the mouth, and that is dangerous, can bring bangs and all that. Let's be careful. And let also be very safety conscious and identify hazards, so that when we find them, we don't expose ourselves to unnecessary risk, so that we will be safe.
Okay. Thank you so much. And let me wrap up with Safwa. 30 seconds, I'm told we have. Please, we beg, keep it brief for us. Okay. What can we do moving forward?
For me, I have to say that there are a lot of causes.
Okay.
Please, when you have children growing in the house, make sure if you have a dining table, never put a cover, because they can easily draw the cover, and then they pour everything on their head. If you have cylinders, make sure you don't put stones on your cylinder. Okay. And cylinders are not supposed to be in the kitchen. They are supposed to be outside the kitchen.
Oh, wow.
Don't overload your sockets. Overloading causes a lot of fire. Make sure when you are burning rubbish, there shouldn't be spray cans and pressurized cans like deodorant and all those things. They are not supposed to be burnt. And make sure you don't put chemicals at the reach of children, because they can easily drink it and cause a lot of harm.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time here in the studio. I've just been engaging Mr. Michael Atukosa from the Ghana National Fire Service, also Judith Kato Addison as well, a burns victim. She has been pushing for survivors to receive the needed care and attention they need. I've also been engaging Nurse Safwa. We appreciate your time here on The Pulse. You're still watching The Pulse. We'll be back with more. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Now let's head to the Ashanti region, where health authorities in the region have actually launched a comprehensive clinical mentorship program in a decisive move to address the high rates of maternal and perinatal mortality in the region. The data-driven strategy is to improve healthcare delivery for mothers and newborns in the region. Regional Health Director Dr. Fred Adumaku-Boateng tells journalists the new clinical mentorship program will address health issues related to non-communicable diseases, supply chain inefficiencies, and leadership and governance gaps related to maternal mortality. Ohiminteria has more in the following report.
The Ashanti region saw its institutional maternal mortality ratio rise from 166 deaths per 100,000 live births in 2024 to 179 deaths per 100,000 live births in 2025, representing a 4.1% increase from the previous year's figures. This is against a national target of 120 deaths per 100,000 live births. Ashanti Regional Health Director Dr. Fred Adumaku-Boateng says the clinical mentorship program is the way to go in addressing the current challenge rather than a reactive firefighting approach.
The country, we are looking at 120 maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. In Ashanti region, the year under review, we had 175 maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. What are the causes of that? At this point, I will want to thank UNICEF. UNICEF has helped Ashanti region enormously to really look at all these deaths. And what we have seen is that when we look at this figure that we talk about, the case is not only for Ashanti region, it's for Ghana. And the surest intervention, and looking at the literature, is what we call the clinical mentorship program. And the clinical mentorship program is looking at why are they referring. And if why they are referring can be addressed at that level, why don't you do it?
He noted the key features and expected outcomes of the mentorship program will include a strategic framework developed in collaboration with the Ministry of Health Policy, Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation Division.
The strategy has been validated by these society and groups that we are talking about. Not only that, we have done implementation guidelines for this. We have even developed a curriculum that will train mentors, clinical mentors, to go and do clinical mentorship.
Meanwhile, the clinical mentorship program will also take a critical look at improving ambulance services, blood availability and logistics in the healthcare space. From Kumasi, for JoyNews, Oiminteria reporting.
Well, to other stories now, the minority on the Information and Communications Committee of Parliament has raised red flags over government's announced plans to undertake another SIM card registration. This will be the third time Ghanaians will go through this exercise after previous ones in 2010 and 2021. The previous exercise came under severe criticism over the poor organization, leaving Ghanaians to queue for days to register their SIM cards. The costs also came into criticism, but most importantly, the inability of the process to cure the threat of mobile money fraud. The fresh announcement of a third registration exercise has since received similar criticism in the last few days. Let's listen to the Minister for Communication, Sam George, on who will bear the cost of the exercise.
The specific cost for a registration of a SIM card has not been finalized. The ministry has an idea what the pricing should be because we're working with NIA, we're working with a number of institutions. But as part of our stakeholder approach, the MNOs have raised issues relative to the cost model that we have proposed. And so there are engagements happening between the regulator and the stakeholders, who are the MNOs. Because, like I said, whatever cost is going to be borne by the MNOs, they will bear a large...
Well, the Deputy Ranking Member on the Information and Communication Committee, Charles Oredu, speaking on PM Express last night, explains how all of these may result in high data costs for you, the consumer.
I'm putting it to Sylvia in your presence that if they decide to take this cost, we, the subscribers, will pay. We are going to pay. The subscribers are going to pay. And then they are going to pay in terms of one... They can, now we are even complaining about data, that the price of data is high and all that, we can't even afford and all that. Now they are going to make it very, very expensive for us to acquire data. And again, they can also decide that, okay, if you have this, MTN said the last time that they plan to invest about $1 billion into the Ghanaian economy. They can say, okay, if government is asking me to invest in this venture, then because out of the $1 billion, I'm going to set aside about 500 million, to do this venture. Then we, the ordinary Ghanaian, we are going to suffer. Even we are going to suffer. Apart from that, you know what Ghanaians went through the last time. Nobody can tell me that this new registration is not going to, we will not be having a situation where people will be queuing to register. People will queue.
Well, it's been a pleasure doing this with you, but I'm leaving you with an interview my colleague Maxwell Agbaba had with the Director General of the State Interest and Governance Authority, SIGA, Professor Michael Pesa-White. He says SIGA will ensure that the Directive for State-Owned Enterprises to stop the long-standing practice of paying bonuses to their management boards and staff, thereby making losses, is strictly followed. I'm leaving you with that. Have a wonderful day.
We are the Kempinski Hotel, where the State Interest and Governance Authority's annual conference is happening. It's a convening of all state-owned enterprises chief executive officers. Also present in the room where the big conference is happening is the Vice President, Professor Nana Jeno Poku-Agyemang. We also have the Deputy Finance Minister, together with other top dignitaries present. And what is happening is they are taking stock of the previous year and also looking at the year ahead. There are a lot of breakout sessions that would also be happening later at this conference. But on the sidelines, we're privileged to have with us the Chief Executive Officer, the Director General of SIGA, Professor Michael Pesa-White. And we're going to talk about the outcome of the first session of the annual conference. There are a lot of things that we're going to touch on, including some of the proclamations and some of the statements made by the Deputy Finance Minister, the Vice President, and then Director General himself. We're excited to have him for that conversation. Watch. Okay, Prof. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, and we are grateful to host you here on the sidelines of the annual conference happening here at the Kempinski Hotel. You were talking about being happy about participation of the SOE.
Yes, yes. I think this kind of gathering is important, and the joy about the high level of participation by the CEOs and their board chairs emanates largely from the fact that today is a working day. Yeah. Many of them would have otherwise been either management meetings, board meetings, subcommittee meetings, but they decided to put all that aside and come to participate in this conference. I think it's important. Never mind, I mean, of the fact that this conference is a statutory obligation that we must all come, we must all do it every year as required by SIGA's Act. They could have easily delegated to their deputies and other subordinates, but to the extent that we have seen the CEOs themselves and the board chairs themselves here shows the importance they attach to making sure that these engagements are not only productive, but they are also very, very helpful in the kinds of reforms and decisions that are made at the level of the SOEs and then the other state entities as well.
Now, Prof, in your speech, you talked about improvement.
Yes.
In the revenue
of
some of the state-owned enterprises.
Yes.
You talked about improvement in reporting,
compliance,
and all of that, and you asked the participants to give an applause, clap for.
Yes.
Three of them you mentioned: TDC.
Yes, State Housing, and Ghana Reinsurance. Yes.
Tell us.
Well, so you see,
where were they, and where have they moved to now?
So, first of all, a bit of a background. I mean, state-owned enterprises in particular, especially in more contemporary times, are expected to operate as commercial enterprises. Even though they have been set up with the taxpayers' money by the state on behalf of the citizens, they are not expected to be seen as though they belong to all of us, so they could be milk dry. Rather, they should operate like any private business do, return value to the shareholder or the owner, and make sure that they remain sustainable in their operations. Unfortunately, in Ghana and many African countries, what we have seen is that state-owned enterprises have become a burden to the public and to the citizens, in the sense that they run, unpardonable losses, and oftentimes compel the shareholder, which is the citizen, to continue to put in more money just to keep them alive. And that kind of approach is never sustainable. And the conversation now for some time has been to ensure that our state-owned enterprises are not only profitable, so first of all it means they have to be profitable, they have to also improve the quality of their profits, but above all the bench line is to be able to pay dividend, because when you pay dividend to the state, then it means you are contributing to the building of schools, you are contributing to the building of bridges, dams, roads, hospitals, and also providing subsidies to farmers and so on and so forth, because it is your dividend that goes into, let's say, the consolidated funds, that the Ministry of Finance is now able to provide adequate budgets for the provision of social services. Unfortunately, it does appear that that culture of paying dividend has been very absent in our XOE environment. And for some time now, we have seen that three of the SOEs, state-owned enterprises, State Housing, TDC, Company Limited, and then Ghana Reinsurance have consistently been paying dividend for some time now. They have been paying consistently. Never mind the fact that the amount changes from year to year, but they have actually imbibed the culture of paying dividend, which is classic. That's how come in my remarks at the opening, I mentioned them and pleaded with the audience to clap for them as a way of encouraging others that next time around they will also need to be clapped for if they pay dividend. And so it is important that we learn to reward high flyers and also encourage those that are struggling so that they can join the class of high flyers. That's the reason why I highlighted them and asked for them to be properly acknowledged.
Okay. Can you give us an idea of some of the state-owned enterprises that were not doing so well and are now performing better after this administration took over?
So
there are quite a number of them.
Yes. So we will see the difference in the 2025 state ownership report, which SIGA is now laying the groundwork to prepare. Because as you would have noticed, the conversations in the room today were largely about 2024.
Yeah.
This should have happened last year, but because of the political transition and then the delay in the number of factors, we couldn't get it done. So we are doing it this year. And we have just begun collecting the unaudited financial statements from the state-owned enterprises. And then, of course, SIGA deals with the state-owned enterprises, the joint venture companies, and then also what we call the other state entities. They are largely the regulators, like FDA, Standard Board, YE, National Service, and so on and so forth, right? So we are currently receiving the financial statements from these entities, the SOEs and all these other entities. And I am sure that by April ending, when we would have received the audited financials, June, July, we would have gotten a firm sense of those who are performing very well, especially under President Mahama's tenure, and those who need to be encouraged or this needs to be. But a cursory glance at the space, anecdotally, I can say that quite a number of them have started showing positive signs, if not being able to declare dividend at all. I am sure we are going to see the number of those who are able to declare profits, because you know declaring profit is different from being able to pay dividend, right? We will see that the number of them that are declaring profit this year might go a bit higher than we have seen before, largely due to tight monitoring and tight call for performance that we have established as a regime for many of them.
Are you able to do a guesstimation?
I know an entity like Buffer Stock had indicated clearly that they will be able to pay dividend. We have seen their unaudited financials. We are waiting for the final audited financials, and hopefully that should give us a sense that, you recall that the president also visited I think Ghana Publishing, and we've noticed that they've come out of a negative to a high positive, clearly showing that they may be able to declare profit. As to whether they will pay dividend, we don't know yet, but we will be able to tell when they eventually decide when they will do their AGM, and then we can tell from there. So a number of them are actually showing signs, and I think it comes down to leadership, the kind of leadership President Mahama is providing, and persistent warning to appointees that you perform or you get out of the space is actually resonating very strongly. Plus, I think that my own interaction with my colleagues, many of the CEOs, many of them are young people, and many of them seems to be, well resting with the mindset that they need to demonstrate that they have the capacity to, first of all, hold the position of trust that the President Mahama has entrusted in their hands, and also to leave a legacy, or to demonstrate that, given the chance, they can actually deliver some very good results. So I am quite confident that we will increase the bracket of state-owned enterprises that are able to make profits, and then also increase the bracket of those that are able to pay dividends, and perhaps reduce the bracket of those that are persistent loss makers as well. By the time we finish our analysis in the 2025 financial year. And of course, this kind of conversation happening in 2026 also serves as a reminder. We are only in the first quarter of 2026, right? It serves as a reminder to all my colleagues.
The MPP government and my modest self, the then the agreement we entered into with Barare DV was a bad agreement, Mr. Speaker. On this 19th day of March 2026, the report which has been laid before this House and the agreement, my successor, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Honorable Kofi Amabua, is urging us to approve. It's a huge vindication of the noble work that Akufo-Addo government and our good selves did prior to the 2024 election. I want, Mr. Speaker, with the greatest respect, that should be captured by Hansard. Why do I say this, Mr. Speaker? Why do I say this? Take free carried interest. Mr. Speaker, take free carried interest. The agreement they brought here, the free carried interest is 13%. 13%. The free carried interest the Akufo-Addo government negotiated was 13%. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, we went even a step further. We went a step further to insist that the Minerals Income Investment Fund will necessarily acquire an additional 6%, which would have meant that the government of Ghana will be entitled to 19%. Mr. Speaker, not only that, we did not end there. We insisted that Atlantic Lithium will list on the Ghana Stock Exchange, and that a minimum of 40% will be owned by the Ghanaian people. And Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege of officially getting Atlantic Lithium to list on the Ghana Stock Exchange. And what the Ghanaian people would have gotten would have been 40%, and that would have meant this whole operation will be truly an indigenous Ghanaian operation. That was the agreement we negotiated. That was the agreement. Mr. Speaker, we went a step further, that the community, the community will be entitled to 1% community development fund. Mr. Speaker, I see this agreement talks about 13%, and I will refer the House, Mr. Speaker, to page 7 of the report. Page 7. And Mr. Speaker, there is a classic difference between what the Akufo-Addo government negotiated for and what is being presented to this House today. And what is the difference? Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I quote paragraph 7.3, titled Interest of Minerals Income Investment Fund in the project. It says, the committee noted that the Minerals Income Investment Fund, MIF, has taken an equity interest in the parent company, Atlantic Lithium. However, MIF is yet to take an equity stake in the mining projects. The committee recommends that the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources take steps to ensure that MIF takes the equity stake in the mining project as contemplated under the agreement. Mr. Speaker, in the case of the agreement we presented in this House, MIF's acquisition of the 6% in the project was a condition precedent for the project to take off. This particular arrangement is not a condition precedent, which is why the report says they urge the ministry to take steps. I would have thought that MIF taking equity in the project ought to be a condition precedent. Be that as it may, it's a good attempt, but it's not an attempt which is as good as what we presented before this House on 16 July 2024. Mr. Speaker, finally, Mr. Speaker, and I see the minister is engaged, but finally, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the green minerals of the world, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the most important aspect.
Honorable former Minister Holdy, yes, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, there's a need for clarity in these matters. You spoke about the equity of MIF. My understanding is that the 6% interest equity, MIF is taking equity in Atlantic Lithium, okay? But that 6% interest is different from taking a stake in the mining project, the project itself. So which one was a condition precedent? Because there's some misunderstanding there. So let us have some clarity exactly what you are talking about. Because you say that in your agreement, the 6% is a condition precedent. But that has been done already. MIF has taken the 6% already. Now there's a second phase of it, which is the project itself, which is what we are urging MIF to take an interest in the project.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is exactly the point I'm seeking to make. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we are more than happy from this side to assist our friends to pass this report, to assist my good friend and successor, the minister, to get on with this business, because the management and exploitation of the green minerals of the world is such a difficult task, complex one with far-reaching implications. And that is why I'm concluding on one final point, Mr. Speaker, which is that historically, all minerals in our country which have been exploited, we all across the aisle have come to a consensus that we have not gotten the full benefit of these minerals because of the lack of value addition, because these minerals are exported in their raw form. What the pundits will say, dig and ship. When my senior uncle, Honorable Collins Dada, was minister, it was the same. When I was minister, it was the same. They mine these minerals and they export them without adding value, which is why, Mr. Speaker, the point was made that in the case of these newly found critical minerals of the future, particularly lithium, we should make a clear effort of adding value to the lithium resource of our country. The agreement I brought before this House, that agreement insisted clearly, not with discretion, it insisted in black and white that the lithium resources of our country cannot be exported in their raw form, and that they will have to be processed to the level of condensates before they can be exported. And therefore, the company was obligated to set up a refinery here in Ghana to refine the lithium they mine into condensate before they can export the mineral. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in Zimbabwe, the Zimbabweans have actually outrightly banned the export of lithium in its raw form. Mr. Speaker, and so that was the agreement we brought here, which is why I am sounding a word of caution. Mr. Speaker, I have looked through this 12-page report.
Honorable Minister, can you conclude for me?
Thank you, Mr.
Honorable Minister, you agree I have given you a length of time.
Mr. Speaker, let me conclude. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude, and the reason why I made this point just to enrich whatever outcome comes out of this discussion. Mr. Speaker, it's very important. Mr. Speaker, if you export the lithium in its raw form, you shortchange your country. And our friends from the other side, the NDC, they made this point very, very strongly, and even cited countries in South America where lithium and other green minerals are being exploited and the kind of arrangements which have been made. In fact, on one occasion, it was even suggested that the state itself should exploit these minerals and that private sector should not be involved, and that Ghana should find money to exploit these minerals, and if we do not have the money, we should not even mine the mineral, we should wait. Those were the arguments which were made. And I'm making the point that the agreement I brought here had a clause in there, a mandatory clause, that Barare DV will have to set up a refinery in Ghana and refine our lithium into condensate, value-added form of the lithium before it is exported. And indeed, they even presented a scoping report. They did research and did the modeling, the project modeling in setting up a refinery in Ghana, which will ensure that we add value to the lithium resource. I have looked at this 12-page report. That is missing, Mr. Speaker. That is troubling. That is disturbing. Every Ghanaian should be concerned. Civil society should be concerned. This House should be concerned. The majority should be concerned. So, Mr. Speaker, I conclude by saying that they say, the old people say that pray to the Almighty to live long and you shall see a lot. If we had ended on the 16th of July 2024, Mr. Speaker, we will not see this day, the 19th of March 2026. We will not see that this same agreement is being presented to this House with 13% free carried interest that we negotiated for 19%. We will not see, Mr. Speaker, that this agreement will be presented to this House without a provision of value addition. We will not see that the agreement that is being presented is fundamentally the same as what was opposed by our friends. On that note, Mr. Speaker, may they withdraw this report. They withdrew it, they laid it on 11 November 2025. They withdrew it again 10 December. They laid it again 19 December. It's still not too late. The lithium resources are so important to the Ghanaian people. We are opposed to this report. Find a way of refining it so that we can add value to the lithium resources of our country for the benefit of the Ghanaian people. That is what will help our country. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Minister, you will just be concluding. Minister, you will be concluding. Yes, you will be concluding. So, Honorable Sanja Nanja.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the motion numbered on today's order paper, motion number 10. That this Honorable House adopt the report of the Committee on Lands and Natural Resources on the mining lease agreement between Government of the Republic of Ghana, represented by Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, and Berari DV Ghana Limited for the mining of lithium and other minerals at Mankesim, 42.63 kilometers square in the Infanspim municipality of the Central Region. Mr. Speaker, today, one of the challenges that we are facing is with mining is environment, the protection of our environment. The committee was particularly about how the company will preserve our environment. And the Chief Executive Officer of the EPA assured us that even though the environmental permit that was granted to the company has expired, every process is being put in place, and a renewal of the environmental protection permit will soon be granted to the company. And also went further to assure the committee that the company shall ensure the agreement went further to assure us that the company shall ensure compensation of resources, conservation of resources, reclamation of land, and protection of our environment. Mr. Speaker, one other area that we looked at was job creation. And as at now, the company, if this agreement is rectified, is to employ over 1,000 youth in the catchment area for direct mining jobs. And indirect jobs are unquantifiable. Mr. Speaker, it's also to note that taxes, the company is not giving waivers or exemption from taxes. And all the taxes that is enshrined in our legislations and statutes will be paid to the government, and royalties will equally be paid according to the prescribed laws in today the sliding scale. As we speak today, the price of lithium, and then comparing with the sliding scale, royalties, government is going to earn a royalty of 10%. And as the lithium prices goes on to increase, as the lithium prices keep on increasing at the world market, it could rise up to 12% of the royalty. Mr. Speaker, on the job creation, the company, the chiefs, Mr. Speaker, the chiefs and people of the catchment area, opinion members, assembly members, youth groups, CVOs, and all identifiable groups in the area were invited to our meeting. And as you say that the chiefs and the people have fully given their support to this project, in the sense that they said this project, when it comes to the area, their local economy is going to be boosted. And also, they are going to see massive development, social amenities, especially with the community development fund of annual 1%, which will accrue to the community $6 million a year. So, Mr. Speaker, given the support that the chiefs and the people from the area is giving to the project, the committee recommended that the House should rectify this agreement so that the economy can be boosted, youth in the place can get jobs to do. So, Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I call on the House to rectify the other side, to join us, rectify the agreement. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, I take for granted the fact that this report made provision for environmental issues in the contract area, and indeed stated that the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, will be required to issue an environmental permit before any operations can take place. But, Mr. Speaker, in my view, the environmental provisions in the agreement are not adequate. Lithium production has significant negative footprint. The key environmental issues relate to water contamination, soil degradation and pollution, waste generation, even e-waste. The footprint is quite colossal wherever lithium is being produced. But environmental permit really, Mr. Speaker, does not address environmental mitigation, because the permit is issued before the operation starts. But during operations, when you have environmental disaster, how do you mitigate that? The agreement has to provide for it. In most jurisdictions, the polluter pay principle applies. But even with the polluter pay principle, it is important that financial guarantees are provided so that when there is an environmental disaster, the company does not give an excuse that they don't have sufficient resources to mitigate. And this is why, in addition to the polluter principle, financial guarantees have to be provided. Mr. Speaker, two ways of addressing this is to request the company to post an environmental bond so that in the event of such a disaster, the bond is liquidated to mitigate the effect of the disaster. The other way to do this is to set up an environmental mitigation fund so that a certain percentage of the revenue from the sale of the products will be put into the fund to be used to mitigate against any disaster when it occurs. Mr. Speaker, these are all absent in the agreement. And therefore, I side with my colleague that this report be withdrawn and these major environmental mitigation issues are addressed, because that is very key, Mr. Speaker. If they are not addressed, then I will have a difficulty voting for this report. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, because of the environmental concerns, communities that will be affected are too exposed. But I see only 1% of annual revenue required to be put in a community development fund. 1%
of annual revenues. This may not be enough if you match it against the enormous negative footprint lithium production could bring to our communities. And so I propose that we should increase it to 2%, if not even 3%, so that communities are properly compensated because of the effects they will have to contend with, because of the risk associated with lithium production. Mr. Speaker, if we cannot do this, we will be exposing the communities too much without preparing to provide the amenities that could help them cope with the footprint lithium production will bring on them. And so these two issues, Mr. Speaker, I think need to be looked at seriously. And therefore, if our friends on the other side will agree to take this report out, withdraw this report and address these issues and bring it, we will all be happy when they bring the report back with these modifications. We will all be happy to support this, and I believe Ghanaians will support it fully. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Yes, minority leadership.
Speaker, I rise to sum up the views of this side of the House, the minority caucus. Article 2681 of the 1992 Constitution. Speaker, let me state for the records that this side of the House, the minority, is ever ready at all times to support development of Ghana's lithium resources, since the development of these resources would amount to job creation, increased opportunities, and creates an economic hub in the central region, which reports has it that central region has a high level of poverty because of lack of jobs. Mr. Speaker, the project at Ewoya represents a historic opportunity for Ghana to participate in global green energy transition. But our concerns are the terms on which the government proposes to cede these rights over Ghana's mineral endowment. The regulatory architecture that now frames those terms and the pace at which Parliament is being asked to act. It is upon these that the minority oppose this agreement in its present form and shape. And earlier, my respected colleague Abu Jinapo and my own senior Dr. Mohammed Adam had cause to reiterate the views of our caucus. Mr. Speaker, my duty is to provide a summation of all related issues, underlining our reason for rejecting this report. Mr. Speaker, you may recall that in October 2023, the Nana Akufo-Addo administration negotiated and signed a mining lease with Barari DV Ghana Limited, securing 1. a royalty rate of 10%, elevated from the statutory floor of 5%, a free carried interest of 13% for the state, an additional 6% equity stake through the Minerals Income and Investment Fund, bringing total participation to a reported 19%, and a requirement for local stock exchange listing. Our friends, then in opposition, vehemently rejected and blocked the ratification. They argued that the terms were insufficient, that agreement lapsed unratified at the dissolution of the 8th Parliament as a result. Upon assuming office in January 2025, Mr. Speaker, the NDC administration renegotiated this agreement. The product of that renegotiation is an agreement that at current market price yields a royalty of 5%, the same statutory floor that prevailed before MPP's negotiation, and at price of $2,250 per ton that prevailed when the original 10% was negotiated in 2023, will yield only 7% under the new sliding scale. Mr. Speaker, it is further on record that Barara DV Ghana Limited was prepared to proceed with the project under the original 10% fixed royalty. The minority invite this House to place that fact alongside the government's decision to grant concessions and to demand a full and frank explanation for that reversal. Mr. Speaker, first, we want to invite this House to look at the regulatory context. In this sense, we proceed to submit that the LI and the GSL amendment ought to be critically looked at. Mr. Speaker, in drawing the attention of the House to the regulatory sequence that immediately preceded this debate, as it is directly material to any vote on this mining lease. Mr. Speaker, the Minerals and Mining Royalty Regulation 2025, our colleague, the chair of subsidiary legislation, sounded the alarm bell, but our friends will not listen. On December 19, 2025, our respected colleague, a former deputy minority leader and now a minister of state responsible for this sector, laid the Minerals and Mining Royalty Regulation 2025 before Parliament, introducing a sliding scale royalty regime for gold, lithium, and other minerals. Mr. Speaker, for lithium and spodumene, the price band are 5%, that is up to $1,500 USD per ton. 7%, that is 1,501 to 2,500 per ton, and 10%, which is 2,501 to $3,000 per ton, and 12%, which is above 3,000 tons. Mr. Speaker, the legislative instrument matured into law on March 9, 2026, having completed the constitutional required 21 sitting days without amendment. Our caucus, the minority, notes that at the time of the original MPP negotiation in 2023, the spodumene prices stood at approximately $2,250 per ton, yielding a 10% fixed royalty. Under the government's own new framework, the same price of $2,250 falls in the 7% band. In other words, the sliding scale delivers a lower royalty than the fixed rate that existed when the deal was first made, at precisely the price level used as a reference point for that deal. Mr. Speaker, this is not an improvement on an MPP steps. At any price below $2,500 per ton, it is a regression, and we beg to submit. Mr. Speaker, our colleague, Honorable Patrick Yabuama, warned publicly on 10th March 2026 that the royalty regulation could cost Ghana close to 1 million jobs by deterring mining investment. Those concerns were not resolved before the LI matured. Parliament now faces a request to ratify a mining lease governed by a regulatory instrument about which the minority's most fundamental concerns remain outstanding. Mr. Speaker, let me delve into the growth and sustainability levy the GSL Act 2026 as amended. Speaker, Parliament has passed the Growth and Sustainability Levy Amendment Act 2026, reducing the levy on mining companies from 3% to 1% of gross production. The government stated that the rationale was that GSL increase from 1 to 3% was originally introduced to compensate for the absence of the windfall tax mechanism, and that the new sliding scale royalty regime now performs that function. Mr. Speaker, we disagree. We urge this House to delay the third reading of that bill for further scrutiny, because stakeholders were expressing concern, especially our bilateral partners. However, this House proceeded over that objection. We, however, draw Parliament attention to the net effect. Whatever additional royalty revenue the sliding scale regime is projected to generate must be assessed against the revenue forgone through the GSL reduction. The government has not presented Parliament with a consolidated net revenue analysis, and Parliament cannot responsibly ratify this lease without understanding what Ghana is, on the balance, actually gaining. I repeat, we do not know what we are actually gaining, and we are being asked to ratify this. Mr. Speaker, we want to now turn to our concerns as a caucus regarding the revised terms. 1. The royalty structure and unverified financial assumptions. Mr. Speaker, it is our contention that government has accepted the Atlantic Lithium's claim that a sharp decline in global lithium prices of approximately 80% from 2022 to 2022-2023 peak renders the project unviable under a 10% fixed royalty, and that its post-tax internal rate of return has collapsed to 13.6%. The minority notes.
Minority Leader, Honorable Abednego. Is that Abednego, the member who turns his back towards the maize? Yes, so you can continue.
Speaker, the minority notes that the Natural Resource Governance Institute has modeled the project independently and found it economically viable even at $785 per ton of spodumene concentrate. Mr. Speaker, the company has not publicly disclosed the assumptions involved in its revised IRR estimate. Mr. Speaker, Parliament is being invited to ratify royalty concessions premised on financial projections that remain unverified and undisclosed. This is not a sound basis for the exercise of Parliament's ratification function under Article 268. Mr. Speaker, second, the transfer pricing and offtake risk. Mr. Speaker, the Piedmont Lithium holds approximately 22.5% equity in the Ewoya project and has entered an offtake agreement to purchase 50% of the project's production for its U.S. refining operations. Mr. Speaker, refineries outside of China routinely require below benchmark pricing to remain viable. If Barara DV sells spodumene to Piedmont at below benchmark prices, Ghana's royalty base, computed on mine revenues, is correspondingly reduced. The minority is not satisfied that the revised agreement or the royalty regulations LI adequately addresses this risk through benchmark-based pricing requirement, benchmark-based pricing requirement, or related party transaction protection. Mr. Speaker, it has to be emphasized that these concerns were raised when the LI came up for consideration, but our friends opposite ignored. Mr. Speaker, the third issue has to do with community impact. We acknowledge the genuine hardship endured by farming families and communities in the concession area, where a moratorium on farmlands has disrupted livelihood for over 2 years. Communities in Ewoya, Amanse, Nankesido, Anochi, Abonko, and Chafu have been patient and have waited long. Our side of the house is not indifferent to that reality. However, Mr. Speaker, we beg to submit that the Agency of Community Relief does not justify a structurally weak agreement. A 1% community development fund from gross revenue, while welcome, does not compensate for a royalty regime that at current prices delivers the statutory minimum. These communities deserve both a timely resolution and an agreement that maximizes the long-term royalty and development dividends available to them and to the Republic. Mr. Speaker, on the basis of all that I have submitted, on behalf of my colleagues, the following are our demands. Mr. Speaker, 1.
Yes, Minority Leader, just a minute. Honorable James Akaga.
You don't have your numbers. Don't cause any problem that would create further problem for you. You continue what you're doing. There's an agreement at leadership level, and you come back and will rise on point of order. Continue. You see the consequences.
See, Honorable Minority
You see
Leader,
the consequences.
Honorable Minority Leader, I hold you in high esteem, but it's not everything that you should be placing into the hands of. Yes.
But Lord, the Minority Leader is intimidating me.
Let me hear you. Yes.
Speaker, the minority that holds the conscience of society and this democracy hereby submit the following for the consideration of this House. 1. Net revenue analysis. Mr. Speaker, we request that the minister table before any vote is taken a consolidated net revenue analysis comparing the projected state revenues and the MPP's original fixed 10% royalty against those under the revised sliding scale regime, net of the GSL reduction from 3 to 1%. Parliament cannot assess the value of this agreement in isolation from its companion legislative changes. I repeat, Parliament cannot assess the value of this agreement in isolation from its companion legislative changes. Second, Mr. Speaker, we demand a full disclosure of financial assumptions. The minority requests that the minister make available the full financial model and revised assumptions submitted by Atlantic Lithium and Barara DV Ghana Limited in support of its request for royalty concessions, including the basis for the claimed IRR of 13.6%. I expect the minister to take note and respond appropriately. Mr. Speaker, third, benchmark pricing protections. We've done a lot of research on this matter. You can't take it for granted. It's not mere politics we're doing. Take note. Mr. Speaker, the minority requests that the minister confirm whether the revised agreement includes benchmark-based pricing requirements for offtake sales to related parties, including Piedmont Lithium. If not, we want to see proposals for such provisions which should be made and submitted before this ratification. Mr. Speaker, fourth, transfer pricing and anti-avoidance. We also call for an explicit protection in the agreement against profit shifting through related party transactions, including limits on interest deductions and clear dividend distribution rules, consistent with the recommendations of the Natural Resource Governance Institute. You are already aware of their recommendation. They brought it to you. 5, non-dilution of state equity. Mr. Speaker, this is very critical, and the minister must pay attention to this. The minority requests confirmation that the revised agreement includes a non-dilution clause, protecting the state equity stake from reduction through future capital costs or corporate restructuring. Mr. Speaker, a lot of times Ghana has suffered under this, where there is a way these investors dilute their shares under restructuring in one way or the other. We want to be sure that the minister has actually secured for us as a country a non-dilution clause that will protect our interests as a country. Mr. Speaker, SID, Community Development Fund Governance. Mr. Speaker, the minority also demands full details of the governance, disbursement structure, and the oversight mechanism for 1% community development fund to ensure that host communities receive the promised benefits in a timely and accountable manner. Mr. Speaker, now we speak for the people. Most of the time, such investors, when they come, they abandon the community. We don't just want talks. It should be enshrined in the document that you want us to ratify today, so that the local people will benefit from this. Else, Mr. Speaker, if we sign this document, Parliament approves this today, that will be the end of the local people. If the majority is not looking at this, we on this side of the House stand with the people. Mr. Speaker, we also demand from our respected minister independent expert assessment. Mr. Speaker, we call on Parliament to invite from credible institutions, including NRGI and the Ghana Revenue Authority, an independent assessment of the revised terms and their long-term net revenue implication before this ratification. Mr. Speaker, with all of these said, we humbly conclude by saying that at any point that the ministry and its minister is able to come to the table for further engagement on these key concerns and ensure that the agreement factor these in, we, the minority, will be ready to support the ratification. Mr. Speaker, currently, however, we are not prepared at all to endorse this agreement, as same is premised on unverifiable financial assumptions, governed by a regulatory instrument rushed into law over the minority's initial objection, and structured in a manner that at the current and recent price levels deliver unacceptable royalty than the deal the same NDC rejected in opposition. Our country's lithium endowment is a generational asset. The terms on which it is leased will outlast this parliament, the 9th parliament, and we will define the revenue, employment, and the community development benefits that flow to Ghana for the duration of the mine's life. Parliament has a constitutional bona fide under Article 268 to scrutinize those terms with rigor, not to validate a legislative sequence that has been engineered to foreclose a debate. Mr. Speaker, we therefore call on this House, and in fact we insist on the disclosures and the protections outlined in our submission before a vote is taken. We owe that standard of care to the people of Ewoya, the people of Ghana, and above all, the integrity of this House and its parliamentary oversight. Mr. Speaker, I respectfully submit, therefore, that the agreement in its current form and shape is opposed, Mr. Speaker, and government must not wait on CSOs to come with their criticism before they do another U-turn. Mr. Speaker, all that said, I rest my case without more. Thank you very much.
Yes, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, if my colleague, the Minority Leader, had served me a copy of what he just read, I would have also prepared a lengthy, statement to read. But, Mr. Speaker, I have not brought before me a written script. But I will speak extempo and respond to him appropriately. Mr. Speaker, let it be known that the former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, my very good friend, Honorable Abu Jinapo, has said that there is no material difference between the agreement that he brought to this House and the agreement that we are considering today. That there is no material difference. That it is in essence the same agreement. No material difference. Mr. Speaker, I think it is important to know that
Honourable Majority Leader, yes, Honourable Abu Jinapo.
Mr. Speaker, most respectfully, for the record, I did not say what the Majority Leader is attributing to me.
What did you say?
Mr. Speaker, I did not.
What did you say?
Mr. Speaker, the Minority Leader,